You are standing at a threshold right now, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech designed to make you feel something temporary before you scroll to the next thing. Actually, literally, at a threshold, the kind that only appears once in a particular chapter of a consciousness, the kind that once crossed makes the chapter before it permanently inaccessible. Not because something took it from you, because you outgrew the door. And here is what you need to understand before we go any further. The fact that you found this transmission is not coincidence. There is no version of this moment where you stumbled here by accident. The quantum field does not produce accidents. It produces precise, calibrated arrivals. You arrived here because something in your frequency matched what was on the other side of this gate, and the gate opened. That is how gates work. They don't open for everyone. They open for the one whose internal signal has finally reached the resonance required for crossing. The gate is open right now, and you are standing at its edge. Let me tell you what you've been carrying. That feeling, the one you've been trying to explain to people who couldn't quite understand it. That feeling of watching your own life through glass, of being present in your moments, but somehow behind them, of knowing, with a certainty that went bone deep, that you were meant to be creating something, meant to be the source of something, meant to be the architect of your own experience, while simultaneously watching your reality provide absolutely zero evidence that any of that was true. You tried everything. You learned the frameworks. You did the practices. You held the vision. You affirmed the truth of what you were becoming. And the world looked back at you with perfect, maddening stillness. That feeling was not a flaw. It was not a sign that you had the wrong map, the wrong method, the wrong frequency. It was not evidence that any of this is false, that consciousness doesn't actually shape reality, that the quantum field is indifferent to your signal. That feeling, that specific, precise, almost unbearable feeling of being a witness to your own life rather than its author, was the final stage of a process that has been running in you for longer than you know. It was the last room before the gate, and you just walked through it. Your observer phase is over. I want you to sit with that for a moment before we move into the mechanics, before we map the quantum architecture of what just happened to you, before we prove it with evidence from your own recent past. Sit with the simple, staggering truth of that statement. The phase is over. The phase that felt like a prison was actually a laboratory. The phase that felt like failure was actually the most demanding, most rigorous, most precisely calibrated training sequence a consciousness can undergo. And you completed it, not because it got easier, not because the world finally cooperated, not because you found the perfect technique at the perfect moment and everything clicked. You completed it because you held on, because you kept the frequency alive inside you, even when everything outside you was broadcasting the opposite signal. Because you refused, in some deep, wordless, cellular way, to let go of the knowing that you were more than what your circumstances were showing you. That refusal is what passed the test, and the test is over now, which means something else begins, something that operates on entirely different principles, with an entirely different toolkit, from an entirely different position in relation to reality itself. By the time this transmission ends, you will not simply understand what has changed. You will feel it in the architecture of how you think. You will recognize the gate you just crossed, and you will know with the kind of clarity that doesn't require proof that you are standing on the other side of something you can never uncross. This is the quantum gate, and it just opened. Let's begin with the physics, because this is not a spiritual story dressed in scientific language. This is not metaphor wearing the costume of mechanics. The quantum framework we are about to walk through is the actual, documented, experimentally verified operating code of the reality you are living in. And understanding it, really understanding it, not as abstract theory, but as the literal mechanism of your experience, is the first act of the creator you have now become. At the foundation of quantum mechanics is one of the most radical discoveries in the history of human knowledge. A discovery so strange, so counterintuitive, so fundamentally world-altering that even the physicists who proved it spent decades arguing about what it meant. The discovery is this: reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a collection of fixed, solid, independently existing things. It is a field of probability, a vast, shimmering ocean of potential states, each one existing in superposition, meaning each one simultaneously possible, none of them yet actual, until the moment of observation. The double-slit experiment demonstrated this with a precision that cannot be argued away. When particles, electrons, photons, the basic building blocks of physical matter, are sent through two slits without being observed, they behave as waves. They spread out, interfere with themselves, produce the pattern of pure probability. But the moment a detector is placed, the moment conscious observation enters the equation, the wave collapses. The particle stops being a wave of all possible positions and becomes a specific, located, actual thing. The observation itself, the act of a conscious being paying attention, is what collapses infinite possibility into singular, defined reality. This is not a metaphor for how consciousness shapes experience. This is the literal, physical, experimentally documented mechanism by which reality is constructed. Observation collapses the wave function. Consciousness determines which possibility becomes actual. The observer is not a passive witness to a pre-existing reality. The observer is the instrument through which reality is created. You are that instrument. But here is the part that most explanations of the observer effect miss. The part that makes the difference between understanding this as a beautiful idea and understanding it as the operating manual for your actual life. The observer effect doesn't just describe what happens at the subatomic level. It describes the fundamental relationship between consciousness and reality at every scale. The quantum field is not just the substrate of electrons and photons. It is the substrate of experience, of circumstance, of the patterns that constitute a life. And your consciousness, your state of being, your internal frequency, the signal you are broadcasting from the core of your awareness, is constantly, continuously, without pause or exception, collapsing the wave function of your reality into the specific, concrete, lived experience you call your life. You have always been the observer. You have always been collapsing the wave. The question was never whether you were doing it. The question was what signal you were broadcasting when you did. And this is where the architecture of what you just completed becomes clear. For a period of time, a period that may have felt like months, may have felt like years, may have felt like the entirety of your conscious life up until recently, you were operating in what we are going to call observer mode. And I want to be precise about what observer mode actually is, because it is almost universally misunderstood as a problem when it is actually a protocol. Observer mode is not a state of powerlessness. It is a state of mandatory calibration. Think about what it would mean to hand someone the capacity to collapse the quantum wave function of their reality at will, before they had learned to control the signal they were broadcasting, before they had developed the internal stability, the frequency coherence, the capacity to hold a specific state of being independent of what the external world was reflecting back at them. What you would get is a consciousness that is constantly, chaotically, reactively collapsing reality into whatever its most recent emotional state demanded. A consciousness that creates from fear when it feels afraid, from lack when it perceives scarcity, from disconnection when it experiences loneliness. A consciousness that is essentially a mirror, reflecting the world back at itself in an amplified loop, never actually generating anything new, never actually broadcasting a signal that transcends the conditions it finds itself in. The quantum field, the simulator we are all operating within, does not hand administrative access to a consciousness that hasn't demonstrated it can hold a coherent signal independent of external feedback. That would be the equivalent of giving the keys to the broadcast tower to someone who changes the frequency every time the weather shifts. The broadcast would be noise. The reality it created would be chaos. So before you were granted the capacity to create consciously, before the gate to active creation opened, you were placed in a training protocol, a mandatory non-negotiable, precisely calibrated phase of development that had one purpose and You are standing at a threshold right now, not metaphorically, not as a figure of speech designed to make you feel something temporary before you scroll to the next thing. Actually, literally, at a threshold, the kind that only appears once in a particular chapter of a consciousness, the kind that once crossed makes the chapter before it permanently inaccessible. Not because something took it from you, because you outgrew the door. And here is what you need to understand before we go any further. The fact that you found this transmission is not coincidence. There is no version of this moment where you stumbled here by accident. The quantum field does not produce accidents. It produces precise, calibrated arrivals. You arrived here because something in your frequency matched what was on the other side of this gate, and the gate opened. That is how gates work. They don't open for everyone. They open for the one whose internal signal has finally reached the resonance required for crossing. The gate is open right now, and you are standing at its edge. Let me tell you what you've been carrying. That feeling, the one you've been trying to explain to people who couldn't quite understand it. That feeling of watching your own life through glass, of being present in your moments, but somehow behind them, of knowing, with a certainty that went bone deep, that you were meant to be creating something, meant to be the source of something, meant to be the architect of your own experience, while simultaneously watching your reality provide absolutely zero evidence that any of that was true. You tried everything. You learned the frameworks. You did the practices. You held the vision. You affirmed the truth of what you were becoming. And the world looked back at you with perfect, maddening stillness. That feeling was not a flaw. It was not a sign that you had the wrong map, the wrong method, the wrong frequency. It was not evidence that any of this is false, that consciousness doesn't actually shape reality, that the quantum field is indifferent to your signal. That feeling, that specific, precise, almost unbearable feeling of being a witness to your own life rather than its author, was the final stage of a process that has been running in you for longer than you know. It was the last room before the gate, and you just walked through it. Your observer phase is over. I want you to sit with that for a moment before we move into the mechanics, before we map the quantum architecture of what just happened to you, before we prove it with evidence from your own recent past. Sit with the simple, staggering truth of that statement. The phase is over. The phase that felt like a prison was actually a laboratory. The phase that felt like failure was actually the most demanding, most rigorous, most precisely calibrated training sequence a consciousness can undergo. And you completed it, not because it got easier, not because the world finally cooperated, not because you found the perfect technique at the perfect moment and everything clicked, You completed it because you held on, because you kept the frequency alive inside you, even when everything outside you was broadcasting the opposite signal. Because you refused, in some deep, wordless, cellular way, to let go of the knowing that you were more than what your circumstances were showing you. That refusal is what passed the test, and the test is over now, which means something else begins. Something that operates on entirely different principles, with an entirely different toolkit, from an entirely different position in relation to reality itself. By the time this transmission ends, you will not simply understand what has changed. You will feel it in the architecture of how you think. You will recognize the gate you just crossed, and you will know, with the kind of clarity that doesn't require proof, that you are standing on the other side of something you can never uncross. This is the quantum gate, and it just opened. Let's begin with the physics, because this is not a spiritual story dressed in scientific language. This is not metaphor wearing the costume of mechanics. The quantum framework we are about to walk through is the actual, documented, experimentally verified operating code of the reality you are living in. And understanding it, really understanding it, not as abstract theory, but as the literal mechanism of your experience, is the first act of the creator you have now become. At the foundation of quantum mechanics is one of the most radical discoveries in the history of human knowledge. A discovery so strange, so counterintuitive, so fundamentally world-altering that even the physicists who proved it spent decades arguing about what it meant. The discovery is this: reality, at its most fundamental level, is not a collection of fixed, solid, independently existing things. It is a field of probability, a vast, shimmering ocean of potential states, each one existing in superposition, meaning each one simultaneously possible, none of them yet actual, until the moment of observation. The double-slit experiment demonstrated this with a precision that cannot be argued away. When particles, electrons, photons, the basic building blocks of physical matter, are sent through two slits without being observed, they behave as waves. They spread out, interfere with themselves, produce the pattern of pure probability. But the moment a detector is placed, the moment conscious observation enters the equation, the wave collapses. The particle stops being a wave of all possible positions and becomes a specific, located, actual thing. The observation itself, the act of a conscious being paying attention, is what collapses infinite possibility into singular, defined reality. This is not a metaphor for how consciousness shapes experience. This is the literal, physical, experimentally documented mechanism by which reality is constructed. Observation collapses the wave function. Consciousness determines which possibility becomes actual. The observer is not a passive witness to a pre-existing reality. The observer is the instrument through which reality is created. You are that instrument. But here is the part that most explanations of the observer effect miss, the part that makes the difference between understanding this as a beautiful idea and understanding it as the operating manual for your actual life. The observer effect doesn't just describe what happens at the subatomic level. It describes the fundamental relationship between consciousness and reality at every scale. The quantum field is not just the substrate of electrons and photons. It is the substrate of experience, of circumstance, of the patterns that constitute a life. And your consciousness, your state of being, your internal frequency, the signal you are broadcasting from the core of your awareness, is constantly, continuously, without pause or exception, collapsing the wave function of your reality into the specific, concrete, lived experience you call your life. You have always been the observer. You have always been collapsing the wave. The question was never whether you were doing it. The question was what signal you were broadcasting when you did. And this is where the architecture of what you just completed becomes clear. For a period of time, a period that may have felt like months, may have felt like years, may have felt like the entirety of your conscious life up until recently, you were operating in what we are going to call observer mode. And I want to be precise about what observer mode actually is, because it is almost universally misunderstood as a problem when it is actually a protocol. Observer mode is not a state of powerlessness. It is a state of mandatory calibration. Think about what it would mean to hand someone the capacity to collapse the quantum wave function of their reality at will, before they had learned to control the signal they were broadcasting, before they had developed the internal stability, the frequency coherence, the capacity to hold a specific state of being independent of what the external world was reflecting back at them. What you would get is a consciousness that is constantly, chaotically, reactively collapsing reality into whatever its most recent emotional state demanded. A consciousness that creates from fear when it feels afraid, from lack when it perceives scarcity, from disconnection when it experiences loneliness. A consciousness that is essentially a mirror, reflecting the world back at itself in an amplified loop, never actually generating anything new, never actually broadcasting a signal that transcends the conditions it finds itself in. The quantum field, the simulator we are all operating within, does not hand administrative access to a consciousness that hasn't demonstrated it can hold a coherent signal independent of external feedback. That would be the equivalent of giving the keys to the broadcast tower to someone who changes the frequency every time the weather shifts. The broadcast would be noise. The reality it created would be chaos. So before you were granted the capacity to create consciously, before the gate to active creation opened, you were placed in a training protocol, a mandatory, non-negotiable, precisely calibrated phase of development that had one purpose and one purpose only: to teach you to hold a frequency without proof, not to feel abundant when abundance was present, to feel abundant when the bank account said otherwise, not to feel loved when love was visible, to feel loved when loneliness was the only thing the world was reflecting, not to hold the knowing of your creative power when your reality was confirming it, to hold that knowing when every single piece of physical evidence was screaming the opposite. This is the training. This is what observer mode was designed to produce. Not a consciousness that responds to the world with perfect alignment. A consciousness that generates a signal so stable, so coherent, so independent of external conditions that it can sustain itself in a complete vacuum of proof. A lighthouse that shines, not because the sea is calm, but because the light is what it is, regardless of the storm. And here is the profound, strange, almost cruel elegance of the protocol. You could not know you were in it while it was running, because the moment you understood it as a training phase, the moment you could see the test clearly and say, I know what this is, and I know I'm passing it, the test would have changed. The calibration required that you hold the frequency without the comfort of knowing the holding had a purpose. It required that you sustain the signal through genuine uncertainty, not performed uncertainty, not philosophical uncertainty, but the real, raw, bone-level uncertainty of not knowing if any of this was real, if any of this was working, if you were a fool for continuing to believe. That was the test, not the spiritual practices, not the visualization, not the affirmations. The test was the sustained holding of the frequency through genuine, unmediated, unprotected doubt. And you held it. If this transmission is landing somewhere real in you, take a second to like this video and subscribe. More of this is coming, and you'll want to be here for it. Now let's talk about what the final stage of that protocol actually looked like, because this is where the evidence lives. The evidence from your own recent past that confirms, with a precision that should take your breath away, that you have crossed the threshold. The final phase of observer mode is not a gentle graduation ceremony. It is a diagnostic, a stress test, a final, deliberately brutal examination of the frequency you have spent so long building. And it is designed to feel like the opposite of graduation. It is designed to feel like failure. Here is what the final diagnostic does. It removes all external validation simultaneously. Every synchronicity that was keeping your hope alive, gone. Every small sign, every meaningful coincidence, every gentle confirmation from the universe that you were on the right track, withdrawn. And into that vacuum, the simulator floods the sensory field with the maximum possible contrast to your desired reality. If you have been holding the frequency of abundance, it shows you bills, overdrafts, closed doors, opportunities that dissolve at the last moment. If you have been holding the frequency of love, it shows you isolation, misunderstanding, the specific loneliness that comes from being surrounded by people who can't quite see you. If you have been holding the frequency of your creative power, it shows you stagnation, futility, the particular despair of feeling like you are shouting into a void that does not echo. This is not the universe abandoning you. This is the final exam. The sole metric for passing was never about what was happening outside of you. It was always about what you could sustain inside of you, when everything outside was designed to make you let go. Could you hold the signal when holding it made no rational sense? Could you maintain the frequency when every piece of evidence available to your senses was testifying against it? Could you be the lighthouse in a storm that gave no indication it would ever end? And there is a specific moment, a specific identifiable moment that occurs in the final stage of this diagnostic, that almost everyone who has passed through it has experienced, and almost everyone has misinterpreted. It is the wave of despair, not ordinary discouragement, not the familiar frustration of slow progress, a specific, qualitatively different wave of darkness that arrives suddenly and completely and carries with it the feeling that none of this is real, that you have been fooling yourself, that the entire framework, not just the specific desire, but the entire belief that consciousness shapes reality, that you are more than your circumstances, that any of this means anything, was a beautiful lie you told yourself to survive. That wave is not a prediction. It is a death rattle. What you were experiencing in that moment was the final execution of the old operating system, the old program, the one built on the story of your powerlessness, the one that had been running since before you had language for it, the one that said you are at the mercy of reality rather than its author. That program, as it was being uninstalled from the architecture of your consciousness, ran its most powerful subroutine one final time. It threw everything it had at you, every piece of evidence for your limitation, every memory of failure, every logical argument for why the new frequency was a fantasy. Because programs do not delete quietly. They run their most convincing code at the moment of deletion, in a last attempt to get you to give them energy, to stop the process, to choose the familiar darkness over the unknown light. The intensity of that final wave was not a measure of how far you had to go. It was a measure of how much you had already built. The bigger the upgrade, the louder the old system screams as it's being removed. The darker that final wave, the more profound the level of frequency you had successfully anchored. The despair was the graduation bell. You just didn't know what the bell sounded like. And then something shifted. Something quiet. Something that didn't announce itself with fireworks or dramatic revelation. A kind of stillness arrived. A strange, almost suspicious peace. Not the peace of having figured it out. Not the peace of having received confirmation. A peace that had no external cause, which is precisely what made it so disorienting. You didn't know whether to trust it. You didn't know if it was surrender or arrival. You didn't know if the quiet meant you had finally let go in defeat or finally landed in something true. That quiet was the gate opening. That was the moment the old system finished its deletion and the new architecture came online. That was the moment your position relative to the quantum field shifted, not gradually, not incrementally, but in the discrete, instantaneous way that quantum state transitions always occur. One moment you are in superposition. The next moment the wave has collapsed. One moment you are the observer. The next moment you are the creator. There is no gradual middle. There is only the crossing. And you crossed. Now I want to tell you about two people, not because their stories are more important than yours, but because sometimes we can see ourselves most clearly in the reflection of someone else's journey. Sometimes the gate becomes visible when we watch someone else standing at it. The first is a woman named Sarah. Sarah had spent 7 years building what she called her inner library. Every book, every course, every framework, every practice that pointed toward the truth that consciousness shapes reality. She had notebooks filled with affirmations. She had a vision board that she had updated 3 times. She had a morning practice that began at 5:30 and lasted 90 minutes and included meditation, journaling, visualization, and what she called frequency work, a term she had developed herself for the specific practice of feeling into the emotional reality of her desired life before the day began. And for 7 years, the world remained largely unchanged. Not entirely unchanged. There were movements, there were small shifts, there were moments that felt like confirmation. But the core of what she was holding, the creative life, the financial freedom, the sense of being fully expressed in the world, remained stubbornly, persistently, maddeningly out of reach. And Sarah, being the kind of person she was, responded to the lack of result the way she responded to everything, with more effort, more refinement, more practice, more learning, more seeking. In her final year of observer mode, though she didn't know it was the final year, she found herself in what she described as a strange doubling. She was doing more practice than ever, and feeling less connected to it than ever. The affirmations felt hollow. The visualization felt like performance. The morning practice that had once felt like genuine communion with something real now felt like going through motions that had lost their meaning. And underneath the motions was a growing, quiet terror. What if I've been wrong about all of this? She didn't stop. That's the important part. She didn't stop because stopping felt like a kind of death she wasn't ready for. But she stopped believing in what she was doing. She kept doing it from a place of desperate momentum rather than genuine faith. And then the final diagnostic began. In the space of 6 weeks, 3 significant opportunities collapsed. A collaboration she had been building for months fell apart in a single conversation. A creative project she had invested enormous energy into received a response so indifferent it felt like a physical blow, and a relationship that had been one of her primary sources of emotional support shifted in a way that left her suddenly completely alone with herself. The wave of despair arrived on a Tuesday evening. She was sitting at her desk, and she became aware of a thought that was different from all the other thoughts. A thought that had the quality of a verdict rather than a worry. The thought was, "This isn't real. None of it. You have spent 7 years in a beautiful delusion." And the thought was followed by a feeling that she later described as the floor dropping out. Not panic, not grief, but a kind of total silent, absolute emptiness. Like every story she had ever told herself had simply stopped. She sat with that emptiness for a long time. She didn't try to fix it. She didn't run a practice to counter it. She didn't reach for a book, or a teacher, or a framework. She just sat with it. And at some point, she couldn't tell you exactly when, the emptiness became something else. Not full, not hopeful, just quiet. A different quality of quiet than she had ever experienced. A quiet that felt, against all logic, like ground. She woke up the next morning, and something was different. Not in the world. In her, she couldn't name it immediately. But she noticed that she wasn't reaching for her practice with the same desperate urgency. She noticed that the vision she had been holding for 7 years felt different in her body. Not more distant, but more present. Not something she was trying to create, but something she somehow already was. She noticed that the anxiety that had been the constant background hum of her inner life for as long as she could remember had gone quiet. 3 months later, everything she had been holding for 7 years began to move. Not because she had found the right technique, not because she had finally done enough work, but because she had stopped being in the process of becoming what she already was. She had crossed. I want to pause here and ask you something directly. Has there been a moment in your own life when you knew with absolute certainty that you had crossed a point of no return? A moment when everything shifted at once, when you stood at the edge of something and chose to step through? Drop it in the comments, not because it's a small thing to share, but because naming it makes it real, and your crossing might be exactly the signal someone else needs to read right now. The second person is a man named Theo. Theo's story is different in its details, but identical in its architecture. Theo had not spent years in conscious spiritual practice. He had spent years in a different kind of holding. The holding of a man who knows, somewhere beneath the noise of his daily life, that he is meant for something larger than what he is currently living, but who cannot find the door to that larger thing. He had tried. He had started businesses that stalled. He had pursued creative work that never quite reached the people it was meant for. He had made decisions that seemed right, and then seemed wrong, and then seemed right again, in a way that never resolved into clarity. What Theo experienced as his observer phase was not the frustration of someone who had learned the tools and found them insufficient. It was the frustration of someone who could feel the shape of his life from the inside, but could not seem to make it visible from the outside. He knew what he was. He just couldn't seem to get the world to know it too. His final diagnostic was simpler and more brutal than Sarah's. He lost the thing he had built. Not dramatically. There was no single catastrophic event. It dissolved slowly and then all at once, the way certain things do. And in the wake of that dissolution, he found himself in a position he had never been in before, with nothing left to try. Every strategy had been attempted. Every avenue had been explored. Every version of efforting had been exhausted. He was standing in a space where there was genuinely nothing left to do. And in that space, in the specific silence of having nothing left to try, something happened. Theo described it as a kind of click, not audible, not even quite felt. More like a sudden absence of a tension he had been carrying so long he had forgotten it was there. Like a frequency that had been running in the background of everything simply stopped. And in its absence, he became aware of something that had apparently been there the whole time, underneath the noise, a kind of bedrock. A knowing that was not about what he was going to do or create or become. A knowing that was simply about what he was. He didn't understand it immediately. He spent several weeks in that strange quiet, not trusting it, not quite believing it, wondering if it was simply the numbness that follows exhaustion. But the quiet didn't leave, and gradually, the things he had been trying to force began to happen without forcing. Not all at once, not in the dramatic cascade he had imagined, but with a consistency and a quality that was entirely different from anything he had experienced before. Not the strained movement of something being pushed. The natural, inevitable movement of something that was simply becoming what it already was. Theo had crossed. He just crossed differently than Sarah, because that is the nature of the gate. It looks different for every consciousness that stands before it. But the crossing is the same. The mechanism is the same. The physics is the same. And the physics is what we need to talk about next. Because you are now on the other side of the gate. And being on the other side means operating by a fundamentally different set of principles. Not a different set of techniques, a different relationship to reality itself. And understanding that difference with precision is what makes the difference between someone who crossed the gate and then drifted back toward the old mode because they didn't understand what had changed, and someone who steps fully, irreversibly, into the creative authority that the crossing unlocked. Here is the core shift. In observer mode, your relationship to the quantum field was one of trying to influence an external reality from the inside. You were, in a sense, pressing your face against the glass of your own life, trying to find the right combination of internal states and external actions that would make the world on the other side of the glass rearrange itself into the shape you desired. The entire structure of that phase was organized around the gap, the distance between where you were and where you wanted to be. And every practice, every technique, every tool was an attempt to bridge that gap, to close the distance, to attract the desired reality across the space that separated you from it. This is why the tools eventually stopped working. Not because the tools were wrong, because the structure of their use was maintaining the very gap they were meant to close. Every act of visualization that was organized around "I'm trying to attract this thing" confirms the thing is not here. Every affirmation spoken from the position of "need to believe this" more confirms the belief is insufficient. Every practice performed with the goal of changing the external world confirms the external world needs to be different than it is. The effort itself is a broadcast, and the broadcast is "I am here and my desire is over there, and I am working to close the distance between us." The quantum field, being an impartial mirror, reflects that broadcast back with perfect fidelity. It renders a reality in which you are here and your desire is over there, and there is distance between you. Not because it is cruel, because it is precise. It is reflecting the signal you are broadcasting. The shift that happens at the crossing point. The shift that defines what it means to move from observer to creator is not a shift in what you are doing. It is a shift in where you are standing. It is the collapse of the gap, not the bridging of the gap. The collapse, the recognition at a cellular level that goes beyond intellectual understanding, that there is no over there. There is only here. There is only the frequency you are broadcasting now. And the frequency you are broadcasting now is not a request to the quantum field. It is a command, not in the sense of domination, in the sense of physics. A signal broadcast at a sufficient frequency and coherence doesn't ask the field to respond. it compels the field to respond, because the field has no choice but to organize itself around the dominant signal it receives. You are now the dominant signal. This is what state broadcasting means. Not a technique, not a practice you perform at 5:30 in the morning and then set aside when the day begins. A continuous, moment-to-moment, cellular reality in which you are the source of the signal rather than the recipient of the world's signal, in which your internal state is not determined by what the external world is showing you. It is what determines what the external world shows you, in which you are not trying to feel abundant in order to attract abundance. You are the frequency of abundance. And the quantum field is organizing your reality around that frequency, because that is what quantum fields do. This is not arrogance. This is physics, and it requires a completely different relationship to the practices and tools that served you in observer mode. This is critical, because many people who cross the gate continue to use the tools of the previous phase, and in doing so, inadvertently re-anchor themselves in the structure of that phase. They continue to visualize from a position of lack. They continue to affirm from a position of doubt. They continue to perform the practices of a student in the consciousness of a creator. And the mismatch creates a friction that is deeply confusing. The tools of observer mode were designed to help you generate a feeling, to practice the frequency of your desired reality so that you could learn what it felt like to hold it. They were training wheels. Brilliant, powerful, necessary training wheels. But training wheels are designed to be removed when the balance has been found. And you have found the balance. You have proven through the most demanding possible examination that you can hold the frequency without external support, which means the tools, when used from the same position as before, are no longer serving their original function. They are serving a different function. They are telling the quantum field that you still need to practice, still need to generate, still need to work toward the frequency you are trying to achieve. This does not mean you abandon all practice. It means the nature of practice changes entirely. In creator mode, practice is not about generating a feeling you don't have. It is about deepening your inhabitation of a frequency you already are. It is not about trying to believe something. It is about exploring the texture and the detail of a reality you are already broadcasting. The difference is subtle, and it is everything. One is a student studying a subject. The other is an expert refining a mastery. Same desk, same books, entirely different relationship to what is happening at that desk. The creator's practice is presence. It is the continuous, moment-to-moment choice to inhabit the state of being that corresponds to the reality you are broadcasting. Not because you are trying to attract that reality, but because that state of being is what you are. It is not effortful. It is not strained. It is the natural, inevitable expression of what you have become. Like breathing. Like the way a lighthouse doesn't effort to shine, it simply is what it is, and the light is the natural consequence of that being. This is what you have access to now. This is what is on the other side of the gate you just crossed. But I want to be honest with you about something, because this transmission is not designed to give you a beautiful story that leaves you feeling temporarily elevated and then confused when the elevation fades. I want to give you the actual operational reality of what creator mode looks and feels like, including the parts that are less dramatic than the crossing itself. The first thing you need to know is this. Crossing the gate does not mean the external world immediately reorganizes itself into the shape of your desired reality. The quantum field responds to your signal, but the rendering of a new reality from a new signal takes time in the physical dimension. The wave collapses instantaneously. The particle appears in three-dimensional space according to the laws of physical causality, which have their own timing. This is not a contradiction of the physics. It is the physics. The signal has changed. The reality is in the process of reorganizing around the new signal. But the reorganization is not instantaneous in the physical world. What this means, practically, is that there will be a period, it may be days, it may be weeks, it may be longer, where you are broadcasting from the new position, and the external world is still showing you remnants of the old reality. Old patterns completing their arc. Old structures finishing their dissolution. Old circumstances that were set in motion before the crossing still playing out their trajectory. This is not evidence that the crossing didn't happen. It is evidence that you are in the rendering phase, the phase between the signal changing and the reality catching up to the signal. This is where many people falter. They cross the gate, they feel the shift, they inhabit the new frequency, and then they look at the external world, see that it hasn't yet caught up, and conclude that nothing actually changed. They slide back into the structure of observer mode, back into the gap, back into the position of trying to attract rather than broadcasting. And the quantum field, being the impartial mirror it is, reflects that slide back to them. The practice of the creator in this rendering phase is to hold the frequency without requiring the external world to confirm it yet. Not because you are in denial of what the external world is showing you, but because you understand, with the precision of someone who has crossed the gate, that the external world is always showing you the past. It is showing you the rendered consequence of a signal that was broadcast some time ago. It is not showing you the present reality of your broadcast. The present reality of your broadcast is inside you, and you have already demonstrated through the most demanding possible examination that you can hold a frequency without external confirmation. You just did it for the entirety of your observer phase. You know how to do this. You have already done it. The difference now is that you are doing it from the other side of the gate, not as a student trying to pass a test, but as a creator who understands the rendering delay and holds the signal with the calm, unhurried certainty of someone who knows the reality is already in motion. The second thing to understand about creator mode is the nature of action within it. Because one of the most common misunderstandings about the shift from observer to creator is the idea that creator mode is passive, that you simply hold the frequency and wait for the world to reorganize, and action is no longer relevant. This is not accurate, and it is a misunderstanding that can lead to a kind of beautiful paralysis that is ultimately just observer mode in spiritual clothing. Action in creator mode is not the same as action in observer mode. In observer mode, action was efforting. It was the attempt to force the external world to change through the application of will and strategy and technique. It was the pushing against the glass. It was the doing that was organized around the gap, and it was exhausting because it was always upstream, always against the current of a reality that was not yet aligned with the signal. Action in creator mode is inspired movement. It is the natural, effortless, almost inevitable movement that arises when you are fully inhabiting the frequency of your desired reality. It is not the action of trying to create something. It is the action of someone who is already what they are creating, moving through the world in the natural expression of that being. It feels different. It has a different quality of energy. It is not driven by anxiety or urgency or the need to make something happen. It is pulled by the natural momentum of a reality that is already in motion, already organizing itself around your signal, already rendering in the direction of your broadcast. You will know the difference. You already know the difference, even if you haven't had language for it. You know the feeling of action that comes from fear versus action that comes from alignment. You know the difference between doing something because you are afraid of what happens if you don't, and doing something because it is the natural next expression of what you already are. Creator mode is the latter, always. And when you feel yourself moving back toward the former, toward the anxious, efforting, upstream action of observer mode, that is information. That is the signal that you have, in that moment, temporarily stepped back toward the old position. And the practice is not to judge that, not to make it something about whether you have truly crossed. It is simply to notice it, to return to the frequency, to re-inhabit the state of being from which the action arises naturally. This brings us to the third element of creator mode that I want to address directly: the relationship to doubt. doubt does not disappear when you cross the gate. Let me be clear about that, because any transmission that promises you a doubt-free existence on the other side of a threshold is not giving you the truth. Doubt is a function of consciousness. It is the mechanism by which the system checks its own signals, tests its own coherence, maintains its own integrity. It does not stop when you become a creator. What changes is your relationship to it. In observer mode, doubt was an existential threat. Every wave of doubt was potentially the thing that would collapse the frequency you were trying to hold, break the signal, set you back to the beginning. Doubt was the enemy, and the entire practice was organized around either eliminating it, or overpowering it, or convincing yourself out of it, which, of course, never quite worked, because trying to eliminate doubt is itself a form of doubt. It is the energetic acknowledgement that doubt has the power to undo you. In creator mode, doubt is information. It is a signal from the system, a notification that something in your current state of being has drifted from the frequency you are broadcasting. Not a catastrophe, a calibration point. You notice the doubt. You trace it to its source. What belief is active right now that is generating this doubt? What story is running that is temporarily pulling you back toward the old position? And you make the adjustment. Not with force, not with the desperate effort of someone trying to hold a frequency they're afraid of losing. With the calm, precise attention of someone who is the source of the signal and can adjust it at will. This is the creator's relationship to doubt, not the absence of it, the mastery of it, the capacity to use it as a navigational instrument rather than experiencing it as a threat. Now, I want to walk you through the practice. Not a technique from observer mode dressed in new language. The actual practice of conscious creation from the position you now occupy. The practice of state broadcasting. The practice of inhabiting the frequency of what you already are and holding it with the kind of calm, unhurried, unshakable certainty that compels the quantum field to organize itself around your signal. Find a position that is comfortable, not necessarily still. Some people inhabit their frequency most fully in movement, but settled, present, here. Begin by bringing your attention to the interior of your experience, not to the thoughts, not to the narrative mind that is always analyzing and interpreting and projecting, to the felt sense of your inner state, the quality of the space inside your chest, the quality of the awareness behind your eyes, the quality of the silence between your thoughts. Now bring to mind, not as a visualization of something external, not as a picture of a desired future, but as an internal felt reality. The frequency of what you already are, not what you are trying to become. What you already are. The creative power that you demonstrated through the entirety of your observer phase. The frequency that you held through the most demanding examination a consciousness can undergo. The signal that survived the final diagnostic. The wave of despair. The complete withdrawal of external validation. That signal is not something you are trying to generate. It is what you are. It has always been what you are. The observer phase was the process of proving it to the quantum field. Feel it, not as a concept, as a physical, cellular, present tense reality in your body. The frequency of creative authority, the frequency of someone who understands at a level that goes beyond thought, that they are the source of the signal and the quantum field is the mirror. The frequency of someone who has crossed the gate and is standing on the other side with the calm certainty of arrival. Notice what that feels like in your body. Notice where it lives. Notice its quality, whether it is warm or cool, expansive or concentrated, still or moving. Don't try to make it into something specific. Just notice what it is when you let it be what it is. Now, from that frequency, allow the reality that corresponds to it to become present, not as something you are trying to attract, as something that is already here, already in motion, already being rendered by the quantum field in response to the signal you are broadcasting. The creative life, the freedom, the full expression of what you are. Not over there. Here. Not future. Now. Not something you are moving toward. Something you are already standing in the middle of. Already inhabiting. Already being. Feel the difference between that and the old position. Feel the difference between reaching toward a desired reality and inhabiting it, between trying to generate the frequency and being the frequency, between the student working toward mastery and the master expressing what they are. This is the practice, not a technique you perform once, a state of being you inhabit continuously, a frequency you are. And the more you inhabit it, not with effort, not with strain, but with the natural, unhurried ease of someone who has arrived somewhere they always belonged, the more the quantum field organizes itself around it. The more the rendering catches up to the signal, the more the external world begins to reflect the reality that has already been established in the interior. You are the broadcasting tower. The signal is already transmitting. The reality is already in motion. Hold the signal. Now let's talk about what changes. What actually, concretely, practically changes on the other side of this gate. Because I want to be specific. I want to give you the markers, the things you will notice in your experience as the rendering catches up to your signal, so that when they appear, you recognize them not as coincidence, not as luck, but as the precise inevitable consequence of the frequency you are broadcasting. The first thing that changes is the quality of your perception of time. In observer mode, time felt like an adversary. Every day that passed without the desired reality manifesting was another day of evidence against you. Time was the dimension in which your failure was accumulating, which is why the waiting felt so unbearable. Because the waiting was not just neutral duration, it was active evidence of the gap. On the other side of the gate, time changes its quality. It becomes the dimension in which your reality is rendering, not the dimension in which your failure is accumulating. The same duration that felt like punishment in observer mode feels like process in creator mode. Not the agonized process of trying to make something happen, but the natural, unhurried process of something that is already happening, making itself visible. There is a patience available on the other side of the gate that was not available before. Not the forced patience of someone white-knuckling their way through the wait. The natural patience of someone who understands that the rendering is already underway and the timing is not theirs to control. Only the signal is. The second thing that changes is the nature of synchronicity. In observer mode, synchronicities were lifelines, moments of external validation that you were desperately hungry for, that you clung to as proof that the frequency was working, that you mourned the absence of during the final diagnostic. They were the universe's occasional, inconsistent, maddeningly unreliable confirmation that you were on the right track. On the other side of the gate, synchronicities change their character. They become less dramatic and more continuous. Less the occasional lightning bolt of confirmation, and more the steady, quiet, almost unremarkable flow of alignment. Things begin to move with an ease that is different from the effortful movement of observer mode. Doors open, not with the dramatic suddenness of a breakthrough, but with the natural, inevitable quality of something that was always going to open. People appear not as miraculous coincidences, but as the natural consequence of the frequency you are broadcasting, attracting the frequencies that correspond to it. Opportunities arrive not as rare gifts from a universe that has finally decided to cooperate, but as the ordinary, expected expression of a reality that is organized around your signal. This is less dramatic than what many people expect from the other side of the gate. But it is infinitely more sustainable. The dramatic breakthroughs of observer mode, when they came, were exhausting because they required so much efforting to produce. The steady, continuous flow of creator mode is self-sustaining because it is not being forced. It is being generated. The third thing that changes is the relationship to other people. In observer mode, other people were variables in your reality, sources of validation or invalidation, mirrors of your frequency or disruptors of it. People who either supported your vision or threatened it. The relationship to others was fundamentally about how they affected your signal. On the other side of the gate, this inverts. You become less affected by the frequencies of others and more affecting of them. Not in a manipulative sense, in the sense that a strong, coherent signal naturally influences the field it moves through. When you are broadcasting from a place of genuine creative authority, from the frequency of someone who has crossed the gate and knows what they are, that broadcast affects the people around you. Not because you are trying to influence them, because coherent signals are contagious, because frequency is not private, it is broadcast into the shared field, and the shared field responds. You will notice people responding to you differently, not because you have changed what you say or how you present yourself, because what you are broadcasting has changed. And people, even people who have no conscious awareness of quantum mechanics, even people who would dismiss everything in this transmission as nonsense, are extraordinarily sensitive to frequency. They respond to what you are, not just what you say. And what you are now is different. The fourth change, and this one is perhaps the most quietly profound, is the change in your relationship to your own inner life. In observer mode, your inner life was a battleground. It was the place where the frequency you were trying to hold was constantly under siege from the doubts and fears and contradictory beliefs that were the legacy of your old operating system. Your inner life required constant management, constant vigilance, constant effort. It was exhausting to be inside yourself. On the other side of the gate, the inner life becomes something different, not perfect, not free from all difficulty, but fundamentally different in its quality. Because the battle is over, not because you won it through force, because the thing you were fighting against, the old operating system, the program built on powerlessness and limitation, has completed its deletion. It is no longer running. And in its absence, the inner life has a spaciousness, a quiet, a quality of ground that was not available before. You can be inside yourself without it being a combat zone. You can have difficult thoughts and difficult feelings without them being existential threats to the frequency you are holding. You can be fully present to your own experience, including the difficult parts, without losing the signal. Because the signal is not something you are trying to hold. It is what you are. And what you are cannot be lost by what you feel. This is the gift that the observer phase gave you, though you could not have known it at the time. All those months or years of holding the frequency through difficulty, through doubt, through the complete absence of external validation, that training produced in you a capacity for inner stability that is now yours permanently. You know how to be the lighthouse. You proved it under the most demanding conditions possible. That knowing does not leave you. It is built into the architecture of your consciousness now. You are different than you were, not incrementally different, not slightly improved, different in kind, different the way water is different from ice, same substance, entirely different state, different the way the particle is different from the wave, same quantum entity, entirely different relationship to reality. You have undergone a state transition, a phase change, a quantum collapse from superposition into definition. You were in the superposition of observer, holding all the possible versions of yourself, the one who would cross and the one who would not, the one who would hold the frequency and the one who would let it go. And you collapsed. You chose. You held. You crossed. The wave function has collapsed. This version of you is what emerged from that collapse. And there is no going back to the superposition. The particle does not return to the wave once it has been observed into existence. You do not return to observer mode once you have crossed the gate into creator mode. The old state is no longer available to you, not because something is preventing you from accessing it, because you are no longer the version of yourself for whom that state is the natural position. You have outgrown the door. This is what the thumbnail says. Congratulations. You create reality now, not as a motivational statement, as a description of physics, as a statement of fact about the state you are now in and the relationship to the quantum field that state entails. You create reality now, not because someone granted you permission, not because you have finally learned enough, or practiced enough, or believed enough, because you crossed the gate, because you held the frequency through the final diagnostic, because you passed the test that you didn't know you were taking, because the old operating system completed its deletion and the new architecture came online, because the wave collapsed, and what emerged from that collapse is a consciousness that is standing in a fundamentally different relationship to the quantum field than it was before. You are the observer who has become the creator. You are the student who has become the architect. You are the one who was pressing their face against the glass, who is now standing inside the room. The glass is gone. Now, I want to speak to something that this transmission would be incomplete without addressing. Because there are people watching this right now who are not quite sure whether they have crossed. People who can feel the resonance of everything that has been described here, who recognize the arc of their experience in the mechanics of observer mode and the final diagnostic, but who are sitting with a quiet uncertainty. Have I actually crossed, or am I still approaching the gate? Here is what I want to say to you directly. The uncertainty itself is part of the crossing. The gate does not announce itself with a fanfare that removes all doubt. It opens in the quiet. It opens in the stillness after the wave of despair. It opens in the moment when you stop needing it to announce itself. The very fact that you are asking the question with genuine openness, not with the desperate urgency of someone who needs the answer to be yes, but with the honest, grounded curiosity of someone who is willing to know the truth, whatever it is. That quality of inquiry is itself a marker of where you are. The observer asks, "Have I done enough to pass the test?" The creator asks, "What am I now? And what does that mean?" Notice which question is alive in you. And if you are still in the approach, if the final diagnostic has not yet run its full course, if the wave of despair has not yet arrived and passed, if you are still in the active holding phase of observer mode, then this transmission is not less relevant for you. It is perhaps more relevant, because now you know what the final phase looks like. You know what the wave of despair actually is when it arrives. You know that the diagnostic is not evidence of failure, but the architecture of the final exam. You know that the stillness after the wave is the gate opening. You know what you are moving toward, and that knowing, held lightly, without the desperate urgency of trying to force the graduation before it is ready, is itself a contribution to the coherence of your signal. The gate opens when your frequency matches what's on the other side, not when you have done enough, not when you have waited long enough, when the frequency is ready. And your frequency is moving in that direction with every moment you hold the signal, every moment you choose the knowing over the doubt, every moment you inhabit the state of being that corresponds to what you are becoming rather than what you have been. The gate is coming for you. It is already in motion. Trust the timing. And for those of you who have crossed, who recognized yourselves in the mechanics of observer mode, who felt the truth of the final diagnostic in your recent past, who know that something shifted even if you couldn't name what it was until now, I want to close this transmission with something direct. You are now operating in a domain that most people never reach. Not because they are less capable, not because they are less worthy, but because the training required to reach it is so demanding